So hi everyone and welcome to our Creation Care webinar on holistic sustainability. Hopefully there's some people who are new to EMI today, so welcome. Thank you for joining. EMI is an organization of engineers, architects, and many more design professionals. And we design and build projects that bring hope to communities around the world. Let me quickly introduce myself. My name is David Wright. I'm the Africa and Europe Regional Director for EMI. I'm currently based in Northern Ireland, but I lived with my family in Senegal, West Africa for 5 years from 2016 to 2021 when I was Director of that office, and also spent 18 months in EMI's Uganda office in 2013 and 2014 as a project leader and structural engineer. I'm a structural engineer, that's my background. You may be interested in my background photo today. It's the Mourne Mountain Range in Northern Ireland. I wanted to give a realistic picture of what it's like in Northern Ireland. So hence, there's lots of clouds, hardly any blue sky, but with that comes a beautiful green landscape that Ireland is famous for. This is our final Creation Care webinar of the series. And any of you who were here on the first one back in April last year, today, Rob Quail and myself, we are reversing our roles. Back then, Rob was facilitating and I presented an introduction to Creation Care at EMI. Maybe for those of you who are listening for the first time, what is Creation Care? Well, maybe one definition is Creation Care is the biblical responsibility to honor, to protect, and wisely steward God's creation so that people, communities, and ecosystems can flourish as God intended. And for those of us who are designers, it's about stewarding resources wisely. It's about seeking human well-being while maintaining the health and resilience of local ecosystems in our designs. It's about working in ways that respect the local context, as well as vulnerable communities, and even reflecting God's character in the way that we work. Before I introduce Rob Quail to you, I just wanted to share, we've had people join this webinar series from 57 countries. That's amazing, and it's a great reminder that EMI is a global organization and Creation Care is a global topic. It's hard to say exactly how many people have joined us, but we've had over 500 folks register for this webinar series and almost 800 views on YouTube of the recorded sessions. So thank you all of you for tuning in and listening and just being part of this community. Let me introduce Rob Quail to you, our presenter for today. Rob is a mechanical building services engineer. He's a project manager and deputy director of EMI's Nicaragua office, and he also chairs EMI's Creation Care Working Group. He's originally from England and he studied at Nottingham University. And just before I hand over to Rob, shall I pray just quickly for our presentation on our webinar today? Let's pray. Father, we thank you that this is your world. We thank you for this topic of creation care. Father, teach us even today how we can be good stewards of your creation, of your earth. And Father, we pray for Rob as he presents as well, Father, that you would be glorified. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Just a reminder, as Rob is presenting, put your questions in the chat. There will be a question and answer time at the end. But without any further ado, let me hand over to Rob Quail as he presents on holistic sustainability. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, David. And yeah, a bit of deja vu here. I'm on the other side, as you say, this time. And about time I did a bit of work and presented. But yeah, it's wonderful to be able to bring you this topic on holistic sustainability in this final session as we wrap up. And in many ways, it feels right to do so. And it ties together a lot of what we've been looking at during the Creation Care webinar series. So today I'm going to talk about, what is holistic sustainability. When we talk about that, sustainability is one of these words that we hear a lot about, means different things to different people. So what is it in this context? Some of the research that the Creation Care Working Group that David mentioned, which is made up of EMI personnel throughout number of different EMI offices, has done a lot of research in this area in order to inform some tools and studies that has gone into various projects. And we're going to look at some of those EMI case studies as well. Then we're going to finish up just looking forward where we're going to go with this next. So, holistic sustainability. Well, when we talk about holistic sustainability, we're really talking about moving beyond a narrow focus on just energy or carbon. When we talk about environmental sustainability, and instead we're looking at the whole system of a building and the campus it sits in. And we often talk about the three pillars of environmental, social, and economic sustainability. If there's too much focus on one at the neglect of the others, then arguably that's not true sustainability. And the statement of holistic sustainability being an integrated approach that balances those three factors of environmental, social, and economic for the long-term well-being of the community that it's serving. And hopefully that should sound familiar because at EMI, that's really what we hope we've been doing on all our projects since we were founded back in 1982. And for those of you who've not seen it before, a reminder of our vision, mission, and core values. Our vision is to see people restored by God and the world restored through design. And our mission, we achieve that vision through developing people spiritually and professionally, designing structures, constructing facilities that serve communities and the church. That really is holistic sustainability in itself. And when we look at our three core principles, the three Ds, we talk about design, discipleship, and diversity, and specifically on that first one, design, this is how we set it out. And you may or may not have seen this before, but we talk about how EMI works within the local context to design and construct culturally appropriate facilities that are sustainable, affordable, and transformational. And just drawing that out, that local context, we're mainly working on projects in the global south, and we're working hard to make sure that what we are designing and constructing is appropriate there. But we're doing that triple lock sustainability of environmentally sustainable, affordable, so economically sustainable, and transformational, socially sustainable. So this is in our DNA at EMI. And so when I talk about some of the sort of specific projects we're doing on this, I don't want you to think that we're not designing holistically in everything we do. However, as a working group, the Creation Care Working Group have been thinking about how do we make sure we can do that intentionally and consistently on all of our projects? And how do we produce outputs that is in a language that the various different project stakeholders understand, including the building users, but also conservationists and indeed maybe green grant funders, of which we're seeing increasing opportunities to access funds? Are we demonstrating and articulating well how we are designing in a holistically sustainable manner? So, and apologies for this slide, this looks very busy with lots of text on, but the purpose of it is really to underline actually how many existing sustainability assessment tools and guidelines are out there. So as we sort of embarked on thinking about how EMI would do this well, we wanted to start by doing our research and understanding the different systems out there. So I won't list all of these now. I'm going to touch on just a few of them. And these don't even show the full list. There's green building rating systems in South Africa and Japan, CASB that we didn't look at, and there are others besides. But as we looked at these, we were asking ourselves sort of two key questions. What are some aspects that might be helpful to apply from these existing tools to EMI assessments and the way that we work? And then maybe what are some aspects that would be less appropriate in the EMI context, and how do we identify what is the best approach for us? Starting off with LEAD, and this might be the one that's familiar to more people who already have some background in sustainability. It was developed by the US Green Building Council in 1998. As a Brit, I should point out that the British system, BREEAM, did get in there first. It's actually the oldest in 1990, for those of you who are familiar with BREEAM, and arguably equally, if not better, but just not as good at marketing as LEED has been. And actually the LEED accredited professional scheme, some of you will be familiar with, getting more professionals working so that they can certify buildings. I'm a LEED accredited professional. A lot of our volunteers are, and our staff are. That's what they do well. And the LEED Green Building Rating Scheme looks at a number of areas across sustainable sites, water efficiency, energy and atmosphere, materials and resources, amongst other, applies points to your given design and your campus. And you can achieve these different levels of certified silver, gold, or even platinum. And then you can market your building as being LEED Gold, for example, and that can get higher rates for your commercial outlet of your office or school or what have you. And as we looked into this system, it's quite exhaustive and actually can be quite expensive. Even a small project can cost about $10,000 in commercial fees, and more typically in the $30,000 to $50,000 for larger projects to conduct one of these lead assessments, get a certification. And so perhaps not appropriate in that regard in the Global South context. But Dan Chong in our Cambodia office sort of concluded in these lines that although on the surface level it might not seem appropriate, there are some elements of the baseline and the benchmarking and the guidelines that can work in the EMI context. But it does, in that second point, as he pointed out, they do tend to be more building material and energy related and touches less on some of the holistic categories, social sustainability that the Global South is interested in. So some things to take from LEAD, and thinking of a tool that's a bit more globally South orientated. Some of you might be familiar with EDGE. Martin Garrett in our MENA office did some research on this for us. EDGE was actually developed and partly financed through the World Bank Group, Switzerland, UK government funding as well. And it's specifically intended for the use in developing and emerging economy markets. It's not holistic sustainability, it's just looking at energy, water, and embodied energy. And you've just got these three levels of certification: EDGE certified, EDGE advanced, and zero carbon, working on 20, 40, and 100% reduction from a baseline level. But it's free to access software, and it provides excellent benchmark data for lots of different parts of the world, including where EMI is at work, for projects in Nicaragua, Dominican Republic, Belize. We've found really good benchmarking data from that. Another tool we looked at was Arup Sphere, developed by the global engineering consultancy Arup. And this is not so much that you don't get a certificate of a different level, but it creates a diagram that shows you a snapshot of where your building project is at across up to 24 different indicators in the three segments of environmental, economic, and social. It ranks in different areas, including water, waste, or maybe stakeholder engagement, site selection, against a score of -1 for substandard, not meeting regulations, up to 3 is exemplary, and can be applied at any stage in a building project design. And actually, as we looked at it, one of the advantages we saw of this is it's slightly less onerous than some of the other systems, and could work well on a EMI project trip type environment where you're working quite intensely for a period of about a week, gathering a lot of data, building a baseline, and then working on where your new design is taking you. So, and then we looked at this guidelines going on beyond just the sustainability assessment guidelines as well. This book, some of you will be familiar with, by the US author Peter Ozolint, got over 30 years experience as an architect in emerging economies, published in 2014. It takes a lead approach, but makes it more appropriate to the Global South projects and simplifies it across 5 areas: design considerations, infrastructure, site and environment, building materials and techniques, and administration. Looks a bit more on the social and economic side. And then one other that I like to touch on is Cradle to Cradle. If you've never read this book, I really recommend it. It's a classic, 2002 by the German chemist Michael Brundgard and American architect William McDonough. But it really talks about the essence of what it means to be sustainable. The book itself is made out of plastic that can be upcycled, so it can go on to be something even better is the point, and that's what it's trying to encourage us to do as we design. And a core tenet of Cradle to Cradle is simply that being less bad is no good. Just say that again: being less bad is no good. Even if we work on eco efficiency to reduce our negative impacts. If we're still overall net negative and times that over a population of 8 billion, that's a lot of bad you're still going to be. So really encouraging us to think about how can we move away just from reducing negative impacts to being positive. And I'll talk a bit more about that later, but that's enough on the theory. How is this grounded, Rob? You might be asking in actual real life projects, and I just want to share these three different projects that have come out of the in my Nicaragua office over the last few years. And I should say there's so many other great examples within EMI of holistic sustainability being applied. And Ellery Walker's been working in Africa on sustainability assessments for hospitals, for example. Greg Young and Dan Chong across the Canada and Cambodia offices, amongst many other good examples. But here in EMI Nicaragua, the project in Bolivia, the Dominican Republic, and in a very recent project from Belize, just got back a couple of weeks ago. I want to show how we've been applying that. So starting here in Bolivia, Talitacumi is a beautiful Christian children's home in Cochabamba in the Bolivian Andes, and it cares for more than 20 orphaned, abandoned, and abused children, helping them and preparing them to be paired with suitable local families. Their current facilities, sadly, are not fit for purpose, but they've got a 1 acre site that they invited us to do a master plan and concept design on for their new facilities. And they said they wanted us to do a sustainability assessment as part of that, because they wanted the design to be environmentally minded, and they wanted it to be lower cost to operate and to maintain. And also they wanted their children to be inspired and learn from what it means to live and study and work more sustainably. We decided on this project to apply the Peter Zollen's book, and we looked at the 5 different categories I mentioned earlier, and how to apply that to different parts of the project. This is some original artwork from Micah Shadowin, who was architect in the office at the time, which captures a bit about what each of these 5 areas look at. And without going into certainly all of the details, what it helped us to do was, as I said, we always try and design sustainably. That's just good design, and that's what we're always trying to do. But going through a checklist reminded us of a few things that I think we probably would have maybe not thought of if we hadn't done that. And these are just some of them. This was the master plan on the 1 acre site, 5 buildings, accommodation, office, guest house, study areas for the kids, and a garden. And one discussion led us to realize we really needed some recycling and sorting area for recycling waste on the site. That does take up area, and located there in O1 at the entrance to the site. Speaking to the TS, the aunties that look after the kids, a big part of their work is doing the washing and drying. And during the rainy season, whilst we were there, actually, they're constantly putting the clothes out on the line, and then it starts raining, and there's this mad dash to bring the clothes back in. And they do have gas dryers, but it uses a lot of energy, wears the clothes quickly. And so integrating a place of covered, open drying that receives good ventilation was something we worked on. We did a lot of work on just excellent passive design. It's got really good climate that allows us to reduce or minimize really any cooling and heating costs. And solar PV was a no-brainer on this particular project. One thing as well, the fourth point there, orchard and vegetable garden. This came out of a workshop with the ministry there, and they really wanted to encourage their kids to think about where their food came from, biodiversity, attracting bees, and that made it on the master plan that might not have otherwise done. So we produced as a team a really nice looking output, this report that introduced why creation care is important. Some of the points we've been sharing on this webinar series so far, particularly talking in the Bolivian and South American context, set out how we've approached it on this project, looking at good orientation, massing, making the most of prevailing wind direction, good passive design, and following the principles of reduce, reuse and recycle, reduce energy demand, generate energy efficiently, and where we need to meet the rest of the demand using renewable energy. So that was what this list looked at, and a clear set of recommendations that the ministry were able to take away. And this render here showing the finished design that again you make good use of shading in the southern hemisphere. So sun path from the north, and reducing the amount of solar gains, but allowing some of the lower angles to heat the spaces. As I said, we almost eliminated heating and cooling demands on that project, solar panels. And the ministry feedback we got was they really loved this engagement. They thought it was really positive, and they'd had a number of project supporters and funders who were interested in this document. So that encouraged us, and we did this similar approach on several other projects in Nicaragua, actually, for a school here, and also for a therapy center for children with physical disabilities. But it felt at some level still fairly generic. There wasn't some sort of hard focus and integrated elements to it that we thought we could do better on, which would require a bit more intensive work. And so coming into another project, Santiago Christian School in the Dominican Republic that we worked on last year, we found a school that really wanted us to go into a bit more detail in the sustainability assessments, and were prepared to make it possible to do an additional package on top of our normal work. And as we looked at that, I should say that the school itself is just a fantastic Christian education facility, Christ-centered, teaching 600 students in Santiago de los Caballeros in Dominican Republic. They've acquired some adjacent land and want to develop, create new recreation spaces, sports spaces, classroom spaces, so they can expand their facilities for another 300 to 400 students. And as we spoke to them and they realized they wanted to go further in this, we decided that the Arab Sphere model that the group had been looking at would be a good fit for this project. And thanks to the support of EMI UK, who covered the license costs for this, it was able to make it viable for this project. So how did we deliver it? Well, here's a good-looking EMI team if I ever saw one. I have to say that because some of them are tuning in, I think, today. But 8 members of EMI staff and volunteers went out there, a usual mix of architects and engineers, but on this one we had a sustainability team. Matthew Coffey, some of you know, second in from the right there. And then Sawyer Shepherd, third in from the left. He is a mechanical engineer, intern. He's done a lot of study on sustainability, and he did a lot of the lead work on this, but supported by myself remotely and another volunteer sustainability specialist who provided input. Also, we had Victor, third in from the right there, a Guatemalan electrical engineer on the project, but also solar specialist. And next to him, Liz, an experienced civil engineer. They inputted a lot of this work as well. And what did we do? Well, first of all, we had to take the 24 indicators that Arup provide and whittle that down to what is the top 10, 15 priorities for the school. It's not feasible to go through a full 24 on any given project, and it has to be focused. But some, on any project, some are going to be more important than others, and those are the indicators that we've highlighted. They're including energy, water, materials, waste, circular economy covers waste, biodiversity, and then create a baseline. What is the existing sustainability sort of score for each one of those indicators, working from a worst case and best case scenario, as is included in the tool. And what was really good about this work was the amount of stakeholder engagement that the team were able to do. Here's Sawyer presenting on clean energy to a number of students at the school, and we're able to get feedback from them. These are some of the notes that some of the kids shared with us. I like this one here from Nicole, who sort of grassed up the school and said that they were currently burning rubbish, and in her last school they had a garden that they could compost and help the environment. And I think we should do this to turn the school into a green type of school. I like that. And actually, the kids had lots of great feedback. They also met with the parents. The parents were really engaged. In fact, the parents were one of the stakeholders that pushed for wanting to do this sustainability assessment, the staff as well. And what they were able to do was, by the end of the week, identify some key areas that the project was going to work on. I won't touch on all of these, but top left there, solar was a no-brainer here. It's very expensive. The electrical cost in the DR, and with solar panels coming down all the time, we could show quickly how the systems could pay back in a 5 to 7 year period. one of the ideas from the students was they had all these push taps in their restrooms in the school that were staying on for almost a minute after they press and wasting a lot of water. So we did some studies and just adjusting those push taps was actually going to reduce the potable water demand for the school by up to 9%. Um, and then one bit of feedback that Matthew gave on this was how it gave us license to engage in discussions with our partner ministry, in this case the school, that we might not always get the chance to do on EMI projects. And one of those was parking and transport. And the school actually wanted a lot of parking spaces, and we said, well, if you look at ways to incentivize carpool sharing and some other creative ideas, that maybe you don't need quite as many car parking spaces. And so all of these discussions went into that. And after the project trip, we were able to build this spear wheel, which shows where the existing state of the school is on these 12 different indicators that were identified as most important. And then we put sort of a scheme together that set out a whole load of proposals that showed how you could then move closer to the green, to the minimal impact, in a 6 to 12 month period. And then with the final completed master plan, we showed how that could achieve even greater impact, including exemplary performance and stakeholder engagement, circular economy, so waste and digital technologies. The challenge we found with this, of course, is that's 12 indicators across 3 different phases. That's 36 scores, and each of those scores has several pieces of information to justify it. That's a ton of information to try and communicate to our partner ministry. So we worked on trying to simplify that. We created this map of impact to show where the sustainability assessment had impact, including starting with the water taps at the top there. Within the PDF, these were all hyperlinked to give more information on each one. I particularly liked at the bottom there the prayer space that came out discussion on health and well-being, and zero 08, the sort of top of the site there, really heart of the campus. Got this wonderful dedicated prayer space to also have other Christian activities take place and focus on positive mental health, amongst other things. And also, it was interesting that the discussion on transport meant that they were able to reduce some of the car parking spaces they'd initially thought of, and that allowed more space for recreation and sports facilities. So you had a sort of a double impact there and a double positive effect. And then these are just a few pages from the output we produced on that report, going into detail on each of the indicators, what they were, and the measures in order to achieve the improvements that we were talking about. So there's a couple of examples then we're doing for time. Right, I'm going to pause for a moment, and I'm going to do something risky, and I'm going to tell a joke, and that's risky because I'm not very good at telling jokes. But this is one I borrowed from Michael Braungart, the German scientist I told you. It's about 2 planets, and AI has helped me here with a graphic. And there were 2 planets hanging out one day, just chatting, and one of them said to the other, "Oh, mate, you look terrible. Are you all right?" And the other planet said, "Oh no, my skin is all crusty. I'm covered with waste. My lungs feel like they're burning with filthy air, and I tell you, I've got some serious problems with my waterworks." And the other planet said, "Oh no, that sounds dreadful. I know what you've got. I had this once. It's called Homo sapiens. Awful, awful thing. It might get worse as well, but then it will just burn up, and before you know it, it'll all just clear up and go away. So don't worry about a thing." And this is apparently, sorry, I did warn you, it's a terrible joke. But this, why do I tell this joke? So this joke shared sometimes with environmental circles actually captures a little bit sometimes of what we think in environmental circles of what environmentalists think about mankind. Actually, we're just a bit of a disease, and it would just be better if we are not there at all. And yet, as Christians, we don't believe that at all, do we? We know that in Genesis, God said He made the world, that it was good, and actually that mankind was the pinnacle of His creation, and He has called us to care and cultivate and steward that creation. And the reality is that we are going to leave footprints. When in the great command in Genesis 1 to subdue the earth, to be fruitful and to multiply. That subduing kabash in the Hebrew, and there's another dangerous area getting into theology. But I love this when you hear about people talk about kabash and what does it mean to subdue and take dominion over creation? Well, actually, sometimes it's been misinterpreted as abusing and exploiting creation, but really it's about taking care, bringing order, bringing life, and it will leave footprints. But we are encouraged to leave positive footprints, beautiful footprints. And I like this slide that Dan Chong shared in the working group from the Regeneration Network that chimes with this, and it points out that actually lead Briam, well, Caspi, these sort of assessment tools I was talking about, is a lot about reducing how bad we are. So maybe a standard practice at the bottom there has got a lot of negative impacts. But these other guidelines are just sort of moving towards a sustainable level. But how can we be doing more than that? How can we actually be regenerative, being positive, being a blessing to the communities we're in? And I sometimes talk about the cherry tree example that comes out of the Cradle to Cradle book. And they use this. It's a secular book, but they use this inspiration of God's creation of the cherry tree. And it talks about as the cherry tree grows, it seeks its own regenerative abundance. But this process is not single purpose. In fact, the tree's growth sets into motion a number of positive effects. It provides food for animals, insects, and microorganisms, it enriches the ecosystem, and provides flows that support a variety of life, whilst also producing cherries and beauty and delight. And so this encouragement, as we design our schools and hospitals and churches, how can our buildings in themselves not just be less bad and have less emissions and waste, etc., but how can they be actively good and benefit across environmental, social, and environmental factors that bring joy and delight? And in this context of creation care and the global south focus, we realize that there isn't anything that quite fits that in the market at the moment, which is where we have born EMI Core. And this is a new tool that we have developed in the last year through the working group to try and carry out some of the sustainability, holistic sustainability assessments, but using the language of creation care, being able to adapt our indicators to be more global south focused. And it's an online platform developed by Matthias Hedgewood, who's was a truly excellent computer engineering intern in our office here in T3 last year. So big shout out to Matthias, who's developed this. It's a secure online platform, uses the Anvil site. EMI staff can enter it with a password. Volunteers can enter it with a special code. And it has this dashboard where you're able to select indicators. So a bit like SPI, select your indicators. You can adjust the sub indicators. You can create this output that shows across different phases how you're doing against the different indicators. And one of the feedback from SPI is that it was a bit subjective on scoring the different indicators. So we've got an AI plugin here that helps us provide some more sort of objectivity, comparing to it reads the location of your project. It provides some good questions to make you think about how you can move your score up and gives you a good sense of where your score is at between a worst case and a best case bracket. And we've also integrated the use of Edge so that we are using the free software there to model our water and energy use. So this is very exciting. This is new, and we've just had a chance to apply it for the first time on this project, which is Belize Camping Experience, a truly inspiring ministry in Belize, just outside of Belize City, with a heart for kids discipleship camp ministry, and their heart and their vision is Belize, changing Belize through the love of Jesus Christ, working with kids from some of the toughest parts of Belize City, and sharing with them the love of Christ, building their confidence, and taking them out of their home environment to a camp environment where they can do that through activities, play, and teaching. Just a bit of, for those that know Belize, this Belize city is set on a sort of peninsula. It's at sea level. In fact, parts of Belize City are below sea level. and on the right there, that's where the ministry does a lot of its work. The current campsite, which is rented accommodation that's not fit for their long-term purposes, is just further down the coast to the south. It's actually regularly floods, and they've been able to acquire a 70-acre site, which you can see just to the sort of north of the plot there below the airport, and they have what they've done. What they've done is we've done a topographic survey on this site. It has prevailing wind direction from the east, south solar path. But this line here shows where the floodplain is. It's one of the few places in the area that has it, and part of it that's out of the floodplain, so in that northeast corner. But working to think about how the site it can be sustainable in the case of a 1,000-year flood was a big focus on this project. And the fact is that developing this site, which is a greenfield site, is going to leave a footprint. This is us out on the site, walking the site in the footsteps of tracks of tapirs and ocelots and deer. You know, beautiful piece of untouched forest, mainly scrub, not many significant trees in one corner of the site. But any development of this site is going to create a footprint. And so the challenge of Core and the team is how do we communicate that that footprint is a positive footprint to stakeholders, including users, but also conservationists and green funders. And here's another good-looking EMI team. This was us, wonderful mix of engineers and architects, experienced volunteers, staff, and also early career professionals. And within that team, we have Molly and Bob. And here's another photo. Bob on the right there with his hat, a architect from Ohio who's a lead accredited professional sustainability expert, sat on the US Green Building Council for a couple of years in Ohio. And then Molly there with the blonde hair in the middle, a chemical engineer and mechanical engineer, brought a variety of experience to the assessment process. Affectionately known as the Bob Marley partnership, no carbon, no cry. They went around and met with a lot of people. What Bob and Molly were good at was listening, and they met with teachers. So that was the principal there of a school that the ministry works with. I should say on the left there, that's Leah, one of the directors of the ministry. And they met with teachers. They met with students. They listened to what they care about. They met with the children of the directors who are one day certainly going to live at the site, might even end up running the site, to hear what they care about and what's important to them. They did a lot of meetings with the ministry and with the design team to get us focused on different areas of sustainability, and we're able to identify 15 priorities for the project. And going to have to adjust your eyes. One thing we need to work on is the color scheme a little bit. But here you see our spear wheel across 15 indicators. And we've got a small spiky red footprint of the existing facility. So this was creating our baseline, looking at the existing camp that we spent a lot of time on. And you can see actually they're doing really well in the area of economic effect there. They're about 11 o'clock on the wheel. They've got a 40,000 following social media site where they promote local businesses, and they do a lot of work boosting the local economy. But you can see around about 4 o'clock there on water, they're struggling. Their current site is, it's right there on the waterfront. It has a septic tank. It has some work to do. And we looked across all of these different factors. We worked out where they were currently. And then for phase one, so this is a functional camp ministry at the new site, we showed what that would achieve. So on water, for example, you can see we've gone up from a -1 score to a +1 score. How are we doing that? Well, that's through the use of a solar pump well, through the use of sustainable wastewater treatment with a wastewater lagoon on the site. And edge modeling showed that we were reducing our demand against the base case by 20%. Same on energy. We're doing really well on energy there at 10 o'clock. That's because of largely solar on site, low energy fittings, did some edge modeling on that. Interestingly, you see biodiversity there at 3 o'clock. It's gone down a bit. Well, I guess that shouldn't be too much surprise. We have had to develop that site. We have had to clear areas to make that site work. But then as we move into the all phases scenario, where the biodiversity actually thrive from the new wetlands that have been created, amongst other things, that's growing into the area of best practice. And a number of these areas we're looking at going beyond best practice to exemplary. Climate change there at 2 o'clock. That's a really interesting area for this project because they're there on the waterfront. They're receiving hurricanes, major storm events, which are only getting more significant and more frequent. And actually, it's flooding more than it ever has. This is the first time I've seen firsthand the impact of sea level rise. People who've lived there on that particular site on the waterfront for 20 years telling us that now just the high tides a couple of times a year on the king tides are flooding the site. That never used to happen. So how can this site be more resilient? And in that climate change indicator, we're talking about making sure that the facilities have generators on the key vital parts of the site to make it storm shelter. The buildings have got twin skin facades to provide resilience against more extreme storm events, and we're showing how we've been more resilient. And I could quite believe that that site will be a place of refuge in the years to come for some of the people of Belize City that lack good community facilities. And this shows the same information, but in the form of a heat map, which is something we're looking at, which splits between the environmental on the left, social indicators in the middle, and economic on the right, and shows how from the baseline at the bottom, where we're scoring around the zeros and in the negative, working through phase one and then all phases complete, how the project is communicating its more sustainable, has this holistic, sustainable nature. And here's our master plan produced right at the end of a really busy project week where the architectural team worked incredibly hard alongside the sustainability team to bring these measures and integrate them into the design. And then finally, I just want to touch on the fact that on this project, we were able to get into some of the funding schemes out there. And I was fascinated to see that Bob and Molly uncovered two funds, one called PACT and one called the UNDP, not particularly catchy, but these are both coming out of the Caribbean Community Alignment, CARICOM. And in the Creation Care Working Group, we've done some work to try and find out where funding is available for projects. And actually for this particular project, the Green Climate Fund and the GEF, both huge global green funders, have got funds that are tailor-made for this project. And we are producing an output that will help that ministry, BCE, access some of those funds that can be as close as $1 million Belize dollars. That's $500,000 US. So those are three case studies of what we're doing, and looking forward, we want to develop that core study more. So watch out for more work on that. We want to do more projects. We want to find other ministries that are looking for us to do this. And I was really encouraged to meet with another ministry from Belize after our project trip out there, who, without us saying anything, said that they also wanted a sustainability assessment. Dan Chong and the team in Petrum, EMI Cambodia, working with OM in the Philippines on their new headquarters that want some of this work as well, doing a collaboration with us in the Nicaragua office. And we're looking for more volunteers. There's so many really well qualified volunteers in our network who can help out on this. Bob and Molly just received a few hours of training online, and they really went well on the project trip and pretty much finished up all the work we need to do during the project trip. So we really want to engage more volunteers, and we want to connect with this funding piece. We see great opportunity there for this work to unlock funding that can make some of these projects be realized. So good things coming. Great to be able to share some of these case studies and the thinking that's gone into them. And that's it from me, David.
Thank you so much, Rob, just for that very interesting presentation on holistic sustainability. I think just very interesting just to see the development within EMI and the Creation Care Working Group, just looking at some of that research, seeing how and if it could apply to some of our projects, mainly within the Global South, and then just developing the EMI core tool that you've worked on in a very recent project. So thanks again, Rob, just for putting together that presentation for us.
Thanks, David.
Um,
I should say, I never actually mentioned why it's called CORE, but CORE stands for Communities, Resources and Environment. So we've done what others have done and sort of wedged in some appropriate sounding words to make a word that makes sense. Core principles, core at the center. So that's why it's called CORE, Communities, Resources and Environment. Sorry,
Thanks,
David, you're
Rob.
about
No, no problem. I see there's some questions coming through on the chat. So yes, place some of your questions in the chat, and we'll get to those just in a few seconds. But just before we get to the questions, there may be some who have joined the webinar today. Maybe you're a leader of a Christian ministry, and you're wanting to see your ministry or your development on a piece of land that you might have become more sustainable. Um, EMI, we want to help you guide you through that process. So if you want to scan that QR code that you can see there on the left, EMI services, or visit emiworld.org/services. That's emiworld.org/SERVICES. And I'm sure there's many on the call as well who are designers themselves, whether architects, engineers, sustainability experts. You can be part of what EMI is doing as well, just in this area of creation care through EMI's ministry. So if you would like to just look at what project trips are available out there, you can scan that QR code on the right. And that's emiworld.org/trips. So yeah, thanks again, Rob, for the presentation. A few questions. So the first one from Graham Frank. I think a lot of people view sustainability as an expensive endeavor that should be done as a sacrifice to serve the earth. Could you reiterate how this effort helps projects become more successful in the short term and the long term, Rob?
Yeah, good question, Graham. Thanks. And it's true. Some measures are going to be low cost and actually removing things that might make your site cheaper, but other measures on the front end can be more expensive. Solar panels is an example of one where it requires a bit of capital upfront, but I think we know well that it leads to cost savings down the line. And so if when we talk about sustainability and economic sustainability being a core part, if your site is the most environmentally sustainable site it can be, but it's so expensive to create that it's not affordable, then it's not holistically sustainable. And so looking at the three pillars, and when we do these studies, including core, is really important. And long term, they should be cheaper to operate and maintain. But sometimes it does require more upfront investment, which I think why unlocking some of this green funding, and we're told that literally trillions of dollars from the guilt-ridden global north is pouring into the global south right now to address this. And then the research the team have done has found at least hundreds of billions of dollars. If we can access some of this green funding, that actually gives you the ability to have the capital funds to do some measures that might be more expensive, like rainwater harvesting or use of more renewable resource materials, but it's the right thing to do and can stimulate the local economy as well. So getting the conversation right between environmental sustainability and economic sustainability is just central to making this any good. And I care about doing the right thing on creation care because it's biblical, it's a mandate, it's what we should be doing. But I also really care about getting access to green funding. The work we've done has shown that funding is one of the biggest barriers to our projects developing. So that's why I'm really passionate about that too.
Thank you, Rob. I'm sure there's also quite a few of EMI staff listening and watching in today. Rex Barber, his question is, yeah, first of all, well done, good job. Just on the new tool, the EMI Core tool, can the EMI staff get access to it? What's happening with the development of that, Rob? Yeah, maybe just give us an update on where we're at with that.
Gosh, hi Rex. We need to have a conversation. I haven't seen Rex since we were running around the Nigerian jungle together in 2009. But thanks for your encouragement here, Rex. We are going to try in the coming year do some training on this. We need to develop the tool a little bit more. What was good in Belize was we were able to find a few bugs and improve a few things. And yeah, I think as a working group, we want to decide how and when to sort of roll it out more. We really want to do some work on developing the indicators and making them a little bit more global south and creation care language focused. But I would say, I mean, in this office, we've really been a bit of the mentality of let's just give things a go. And our experience has been if you can just push the needle and make it a more positive than it would have been otherwise, then that's worthwhile. And so, yeah, if you want a conversation, we've got some training materials online for YouTube videos that Matthias has done. It's quite easy to take as it currently is, but it's still in development. And yeah, more news to come on how we were going to roll that out.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, we'll look forward to seeing that develop and getting it rolled out. A question as a potential volunteer, say somebody is listening in, watching this webinar today, and they're thinking, Rob, I don't really have experience in sustainability. I don't really have a background in that. Can I still get involved? Can I still go on a project trip? What can I do to support the work of EMI? How can I get involved?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think maybe on the Belize project is a good example of how we paired Bob in the sustainability team, who is a seasoned expert in sustainable design and architecture, a lead accredited professional, like I said, with Molly, who has experience in mechanical and chemical engineering, in working in the commercial power sector at the moment, and actually a lot of the factors of sustainability are just require good technical understanding, and you can get to grips with them at this level of a study. And this require people who are good listeners, and that's what Bob and Molly were great at, was going and listening and doing these workshops and stakeholder engagement. We had really positive feedback from the guys there just in the last week about how, from the end of week presentation, they had people coming up to them and saying, this was really good. I'm really glad you're looking at this well. And actually, they said we wish we could have had more stakeholder engagement with Bob and Molly. So yeah, I think they're an example of how you don't have to be hugely experienced in this. We would pair you with somebody experienced potentially and do some training. And if you were maybe from one of the less regular engineering disciplines that find it hard to be placed on projects of the structural, civil, electricals. It might be that there's an opportunity in one of these roles. We're not going to be doing these on all of our projects, but we might be doing them on more and more. So do look out for sustainability specialist on the project trip sort of recruitment list on the web pages to come.
I've got a couple of questions from Derek. I think, Derek, you're a structural engineer like myself. You've got three questions there. The first one, I'll maybe let you, Rob, answer that, but I'll maybe answer the second one. The first one's just about lead and edge certifications, which probably generally lead more towards architects. Any part of those that would be specifically important for structural engineers? Would you recommend any? So just as you think about that, Derek's also asking just from a structural design side, uh, does sustainability mostly focus on choice of materials? Uh, if you could give a 1 minute brief outline of some of the structural engineering considerations to be considered generally to contribute to sustainability, if possible. And I think just a quick answer from my side on that. As a member of the Institution of Structural Engineers in the UK, just reading in their magazine this past week, one of the articles just on reuse, the hierarchy of reuse, a framework for structural engineers for reusing more and wasting less. And really at the top of that hierarchy is retain as much as possible to repair existing infrastructure, existing materials, refurbish, retrofit, remodel, and repurpose. So those are things to think about if we're reusing a building, or rather than demolish and rebuild. Those are some things we can think about that will be more sustainable and create less carbon in the realm of structural engineering. Um, Rob, what do you think about lead and edge and those for structural engineers?
Yeah, good question. I mean, on Edge, I really like Edge, and I encourage people to check it out. It's a free piece of available software that anybody can go in. It's got good benchmark data to work from, and they do work on embodied energy in materials and embodied carbon. And there's a $150 course that shows you how to become a certified lead assessor, and there's a $100 exam that you can do. And that, yeah, I think architects, structural engineers, but actually engineers can pick up the basics to do that in the same way you can become a lead accredited professional from any one of a number of design disciplines. So yeah, there's definitely for both lead and edge, all built environment design disciplines can get involved with them. There's some training that's involved. And I think I'd love to do more work with Edge, to be honest with you. And I think we'll see that on our projects coming up. What was interesting was that for those two funds I mentioned for the Belize project, they required projects to be Edge certified in order to get their funding. That's something to bear in mind. Wouldn't it be great if in future green funders required projects to have had an EMI core assessment done in order to get funding? Could we fill that gap?
Thank you, Rob. We're on 3 minutes to the hour, and I think rather let us finish just before the hour. So just yeah, thanks again, Rob, just for that presentation. I think one thing that stood out to me, just as I was just thinking back, was just your interaction with the stakeholders and basically the students in the school, and that letter from Nicole just about wanting to have a greener school. So thanks for sharing that presentation, Rob, and just yeah, informing us of what's happening within EMI and the Creation Care Working Group. And just a reminder, if you're a ministry leader or you know a ministry leader or you think somebody could use EMI's help, scan that QR code on the left, EMI services. Or if you're tuning in for the first time and you think, I would like to volunteer on a project trip with EMI, scan that QR code on the right, EMI project trips. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Blessings on the rest of your day. And yeah, let's remember that the earth is the Lord's and we play a part in looking after it and yeah, making it a better place, a sustainable place. So thanks again, Rob, and thanks everyone for tuning in.